Alright, so now once we have our thumbnails, let's go ahead and refine it. So for the sake of example here, I'm just going to be going for a rougher kind of pose here. I'm just going to go for a more rougher kind of example here. So I will redraw this for my final, but I'm just showing you guys here what you guys can do when it comes to refining. So let's just go ahead and get started. So I will actually search up a pose that is similar to this, just because once I have my main idea of what I want this pose to be, I'm going to search up some reference to just to get a better idea of how I want this finalized look to be like. So I will be right back and collecting some reference. Of course, I will put it in the downloadable resources down below. Feel free to collect your own references on poses and clothing and the like, and I will see you in a little bit. Alright, so I have my reference with me. It's on my phone here. Of course, this is in the downloadable resources. So I'm just going to go through with just a brief overview of what I do with my references, especially for a quick drawing like this or a quick illustration that's not exactly investing in a long in a carefully made character. But anyway, so I have some pose references that I will be using, something like, you know, maybe from different sides of the same angle of the same pose. So I have some front views and I have some side 3/4 views, and I have since she's raising her hand, I have a little picture of a girl with her hand raised, and then some outfit ideas. Now, this is just a one-shot kind of character, so I will be just using a more of like a gothic, cutesy kind of style here, kind of with, you know, corsets and belts and all that stuff. But if you want to go more in depth with your character, be my guest and do that. So I'm just going to be using this as a reference point for now, and let's just get started with refining. So a good way to refine is to draw the body or the pose multiple times. So I'm going to be drawing some poses here just to kind of like gauge of what I want, and then I'll draw my refined version here. So I'm just going to be testing out some poses just based on my sketch up here, so I'll be looking at that and all that. So do the same if you need to. So I'm thinking I want to do one variation where she's kind of like on the side here, so I'm using the one where I'm using this reference here specifically as a base, and I'm going to be following the basic rule of drawing poses, which is, you know, constructing it, you know, one hand length down, constructing the box, and so on. So this looks like she's kind of facing down, so the box would be facing down, and it looks like the box or the pelvis box is kind of facing back here. So if you want, you can like split it into two boxes, and that can be pretty useful. So here we have the legs out here, which can be simplified into little rectangles. And this can also be a refining phase as well. So you can also use this to kind of change the pose if you want to, but don't go too far from what you originally planned. So here's the breast area. And then maybe here we have her hand. We'll use 4s in this case as like a little. We'll make her hand a little bit more popping it, you know, kind of like she's putting her paws up or something like that. Maybe her one hand could be down here and kind of resting on the floor. Now this is just, you know, once again a rough sketch, but I'm starting to get the kind of the idea of what kind of pose I want. And here we have the leg down here, and then the foot, which can just be roughly put in. So that's one pose idea. Maybe another pose idea could just be more frontal as well. I'm going to move away some of the equipment that I have around my desk here. So let's go with something more like this, and if you want to analyze it, go ahead. I'm going to start off with the head, just kind of facing towards us. I feel like this kind of pose is more natural for her because it's closer to what I had in mind in the first sketch. So once again, draw some boxes. But in this case, rather than having her kind of arch forward like so, here, I'm going to make her arch kind of back here. Once again, I'm just going to block in where the pelvis is and where the chest is. Have her arm in front. And now, since I have my reference, I can easily pinpoint where I want my leg to be. So before, I was just like, okay, well, the legs are sort of, in an area that's, closed together, for something, for an example like this. However, because I have an example here, just as a reference, I can use that, and then I can go ahead and use that as an example, or kind of go one-on-one with this. So I can draw it based on my reference, and it'll become a lot easier. So we have the foot here, and we have the boots here, whichever. And then this one, her hand can just be like so. Just kind of outward like that. And I think that will work fine. Once again, we can, add in some little features here if we want to. But all of this is just constructing and then adding detail later. So I think this one works best because I have the reference that is needed for that. This one was an okay try. However, I like this one better because it's, close, pretty much very, if not exactly close to my first initial sketch. So once I have my pose all ready to go, I can go ahead and transfer that onto the drawing. Now, if you're scared of being like, okay, well, what if I'm going to ruin this time? Just don't care about it too much. Don't worry about it too much because honestly, if this is your first illustration in a long time or your first illustration period, then, just think of this as planning, and that you can make mistakes at this point. The only time where you want to refine and not make that many mistakes is your refining stage, which we will go over too. So this is your rough sketch point. So we have our thumbnail and rough sketch. So of course, we're going to kind of just map out where we want our character. First, we're going to put in our head, as always. Our neck is sort of inward, and of course, always have your reference at hand, because that will just help you. It's a tool to help you get more of, make your life easier when it comes to drawing. So her chest, oh, forgot, we gotta draw her box first, the ribcage box, and then the other box, the pelvis box, and the like. So here is where her pelvis is going to be, roughly. Of course, this can change. And then this is where her legs are going to be. So her legs are going to be kind of flat. One leg is going to be more in front. And kind of spread a little bit. So this leg kind of goes back more. And here we have the foot. So it's just basically replicating what you just did onto here, onto a bigger sheet. Of course, don't worry about, crossing the line here. We're gonna redraw this anyway. And here we have our arm, which you have the elbow, and then you have the hand. And you have the paws. Here we have the chest. We can draw on the chest at this point. And I'm going to look at this little reference here just for some clarity. So maybe her hand could be a little bit closer. Maybe her hand is more closer to her face, so it's kind of like, more cheeky rather than, super cutesy. And her arm would be resting on her side. I think that pose is actually really cute, so I like that. Now we can kind of just start roughing in what her design will look like. So if you want, you can draw, extra sketches on the side, just to kind of plan what her design is going to be like. So I'm going to do that right on the side here. So this is another part of the planning, just draw a really quick mannequin, 2 boxes, half is the pelvis and the rib cage, and and they have the legs. So drawing a quick mannequin like this will help. So I like the idea of a, kind of like a turtleneck with a kind of like an overall look with the crop top. So similar to this reference here, but I'm going to make it a little bit different. So this will be filled with fur. And of course, do as many of these sketches as you want. Since she has undershirt underneath, let's just kind of put in that, just kind of shade it here, just so we know. And let's give her a belt. This can have a little insignia on it, maybe like a little cat insignia. And maybe let's have like little belt strings hanging on the side. Now, of course, if you have your reference, you would see these kind of often. This is kind of like a little trend nowadays with kind of this fashion nowadays. So, yeah. Let's give her a little poofy sleeve, and then the rest can be long sleeved here. That would be kind of cute. Then let's give her a pleated skirt, because why not? Or we can give her a pencil skirt, but I can always change my mind on that later. So this would be like a little rough on what this would be like. Now let's go ahead and continue refining. So let's go ahead and add in our little outfit. So instead of a, just a regular choker here, I'm actually going to give her a little bow at this point, just because it's more feline-like, Gotta have a little bit of immersion. Let's add in our top. Here's our strap. And maybe instead of fur, I'm actually going to give her like a kind of like a cheetah pattern or something. So I'm just going to mark this really roughly. And this is kind of like a seam line down here. And let's give her a little corset in the center, just for some nice kick. Or just, because it looks nice. And then we can go ahead and give her a little midriff. This is more like fashion design here. Once again, continue overlapping the cloth on top. This is more like a fashion design here. You don't have to go all out on this. You can just make it also very, very simple as well. But I like to kind of go all out just because, it's nice. I feel like I want to add something here. Oh, here is her high-waist skirt. Let's give her a belt. Once again, overlap around her body like a cylinder. And then draw a little cat insignia on it with a little bat next to it, maybe with some bat wings. If you want to erase some of these lines here, go ahead and do that. So she's going to have a shirt on over her chest area. So I'm going to just shade this just to show that this is a shirt. Let's give her some little puffy sleeves here. And let's shade that. So once again, you can see that from our rough thumbnail here to our, example poses here, this is starting to look a little bit more complete. And maybe instead of a long sleeve, I'll give her some short sleeves. Let's give her some ruffly kinds of, a ruffled sleeve. How about that? And these can just be regular gloves. I do like the pleated skirt because I want to show some form of where the floor is. So here I'm going to just draw some pleats that are facing the floor and then wrapping over on top of her just wrapping on top of her legs. So you want to just wrap it around like a cylinder once again. And I'm only drawing girls just because I like drawing girls. You can do whatever you want. Let's give her like a little chain And let's kind of put some little bells on it. How about that? Because, you know, cats and their bells. And because we're kind of in a Halloween mood, even though it's not even Halloween yet, let's give her some, let's see. Hey, let's give her some stockings. How about that? Maybe some striped stockings. Well, of course, if you want to test it out, you can do that as well. I think I'm actually going to make this a little bit more simpler. So maybe cat-like leggings. Of course, those exist. So I'm kind of just using my visual library right now. So I'm going to shade all this in because this is like a kind of like a black legging or stocking. And then her boots can just be a little bit hidden from the back. And these can be like platform shoes or whatever. Some buckles. And that's good for the outfit. So I'm pretty happy with how this looks. And then let's give her a tail, of course. Let's have it wrap around her body so it gives a more, just a more kind of cuter and more dynamic feel. So rather than just having straight up like this, having it wrap around her body makes it look more like it's pulling you into the image. And then for hair, actually, let's give her ears first. I know I'm drawing a lot of anime girls with ears now, with animal ears nowadays. I'm not sure why. It's actually quite fun to do these. Okay, so I do like the parted bangs look, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And let's give her some sharp cat-like eyes. Once again, if you are used to drawing faces now, you should pretty much, you know, start getting the hang of where your proportion lies. I feel like I want to give her some ponytail, but I think I'll just leave it down for now. Maybe I'll do a half up, half down kind of hairstyle. Yeah, I think that should work. I'll draw her hair from the back. And I think that should be good for the character itself. Now, if you want to draw some little backgrounds here and there, you can draw a little plane at the back, just to kind of show where she's going. And then kind of just draw in some perspective lines. So since we're looking kind of frontal at her, and then we also are kind of looking down, she's in a kind of like this kind of position here. So I'm just going to draw the side of a box here. This is what she looks like. We're kind of looking at the side of a box here. So if you kind of translate that to what this looks like, our lines will basically be looking more downward here because we're looking down at her legs and she's kind of facing slanted towards us, so you want the grid to be sort of slanted. Maybe kind of thinking what would be a good floor for her. Maybe a yarn ball in the front. And this is just for, you know, some nice foreground look here. So we have a yarn ball. Let's see, what else do cats like? Okay, maybe I'll add a cat at the back too. Maybe I'll have a cat walking. Now, of course, I'm not all that into animal anatomy, but if you want to just look at a reference of a cat, go ahead and do so. This is a really derpy looking cat, but this is just planning. So I'll have a cat here. Stupid looking tail. At the back. Now let's give her some curtains, because why not? Maybe she's kind of like a pampered kitty or something. She's a spoiled kitten or cat girl that likes to be spoiled and have a nice bed. So Let's see what else we can give her in the background. You know what? Let's just make this a bed. This is her spoiled, nice cat bed that for some reason a lot of cats don't sleep in. This is like the expensive cat bed that only she would sleep in. So, anyways, that's pretty much that. And now let's add some pillows at the back. Make sure that, you know, you're not having any weird tangents, you know, like you're having the hair connect with this part here. Don't do that because I'll make the image look weird. So try to avoid those kind of tangents where weird things are bumping into each other. I just don't like this though, because it looks kind of, I don't like it, actually. Let's actually make a little bit less bed-like, because it feels a bit wrong. Sorry, guys. Let me think. Maybe let's give her some wrapper. Like maybe she kind of came out of a gift box or something. So let's give her some, let's kind of sketch in some wrapper, crinkled wrapper that she's laying on. Maybe some fluff as well. You know, like those fluffy wrapping paper that you kind of see in gift boxes. So that'll be good. And the reason why I also added curtains is because I want the curtains to frame her and, you know, keep her at the center. So that is a refined look. Let me just add some windows here. So this is like a window at the back maybe. Now it looks like a cage right now. Okay. This will be the windows, and then we will be able to see maybe like a little city at the back or something. This is just more of like a graphic thing. Now you don't have to do this, of course, but this is kind of extra here. So I'm doing it. So I'm just adding a little city here. There's not really much perspective because once again, this is a complex character. So you want her to be the focus and the background is more flat. So flat, complex character, flat background. Complex background, flat character. So because you have a very centralized character here, then the background will just be kind of like a flat wallpaper. Alright, that's pretty much it for this video. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.